fucking dickhead mouths. Even they can't believe what they're saying. So what they do to compensate is, like, they go, God, I'll never believe that. They say two things that are lesser bullshit real quick to compensate. Like, an example of what a speed bullshitter will do is something like this. Listen, this guy we're having dinner with tonight is Jack Nicholson's son. It's his nephew. He knows him. Last night, I fucked Jennifer Aniston. I met her. I keep out friends. An agent out here wants to do this, such like those like antiseptic, phony mannequin, leprechaun asswipes. They don't talk like real people. And I had this film agent once who didn't call me for like a year. And my manager, I said, dude, he's not calling me. He's an asshole. So 10 minutes later, the guy calls me and leaves me a message on my machine. Like, I don't realize my manager said call him. He hadn't heard from him. And the message, I wish I would have saved every douchebag agent message and put out a fucking album. On my answering machine, clearly his assistant goes, look, call Artie just to like appease the fat fuck or something. He leaves the message and you can tell he's clearly got that headset fucking thing in and his asshole BMW driving through Faggot Canyon or whatever the fuck it is. He gets my machine, and this is actually the truth. He said this. He gets my machine, and on my machine, this is what he said. He goes, Artie, Jason Garrett over at UTA. I was just at Universal talking about guess who? You. Oh, God. When I see him again, am I ever going to stop punching him in the face? So I've been on the Stern Show now for 7 years. The world has become so politically correct, man, it's hard to like, even the kid shows are politically correct now. You know on Sesame Street, they tried to add a character a few years ago that has AIDS? A puppet with fucking AIDS? In South Africa, AIDS is running so rampant, they added a character on South African Sesame Street with AIDS. In America, we said no, and they were like, why? And we said, well, maybe because we don't want to depress the living shit out of 4-year-old fucking kids. Could they have a little time to figure out that life doesn't completely blow? A puppet on Sesame Street with AIDS? Snuffleupagus shows up, he weighs only 60 pounds. He's got legions all over his body. That's fun for your 4-year-old to watch. Big Bird's like, what's the matter, Snuff? I have AIDS, Bird. Shared a needle with Mr. Hooper, Bird. Took it in the ass one too many times, Bert. Now here's Grover with today's letters, H-I-M-V. But for hardcore Stern fans, which I'm sure you guys are, you've been there 7 years, what's a really good story that a real fan would appreciate? And this by far is the funniest thing behind the scenes that ever happened. About 5 years ago, we were still at K-Rock, we were still at the old station, and I love the guests on the show who are really funny comics, who are smart enough, like, you know, like the fans, they get the joke of the show, they get it, they know what the show's about, and they're funny because them and Howard are on the same wavelength and they riff, and that's why one of my favorite guests is the great Chris Rock. We all love Chris Rock. And about 5 years ago, Rock was on the show. This is the greatest Stern story ever. And Howard does a great 30-minute interview with Chris. And at the end of the interview, he says to Rock, he goes, listen, Chris, let's go to the phones and see what the phone callers want to say to you, man. See what the crowd has to say. And Chris, knowing how the show worked, goes, here's where I get called a nigga. What the guests didn't realize was Howard, you know, he wears sunglasses so he could hide this, but in front of the computer that Howard looks at, there's a screen in front of him that I could see in the old place and he could see. And on that screen are all the phone calls. And it has the person's name, where they're from, and what they want to say when they get on here. So Chris couldn't see it, and Howard and me could see the phone calls. And after Rock goes, here's where I get called a nigga. I my hand to God, here are the first 3 calls. Number 1, Vinny from Queens wants to call Chris a nigger. Number 2, Eddie from Long Island thinks Chris is a nigger. Number 3, not to leave out my home state, Joey from New Jersey, who asks the intelligent question that made me proud. Why is Chris such a nigger? And the 4th caller wanted to call me fat in case he gay. So after Rock says that, Howard looks at the calls, and this is what's so great about Howard. He goes, "Oh, come on, Chris, I would never do that to you. We're friends, we know each other off the air. I wouldn't let that racist crap on my radio. You should know me better than that, man. We're buddies, I would never do that to you. Come on." And Rock goes, yeah, whatever. And then Howard takes a pause and goes, "Vinny from Queens, you're on the air." That's a cool show. Right? That ain't The View, man. That ain't Ellen. People, the N-word is the worst, most offensive racial slur of all time. And other people, you say the N-word and shit just stops. And there's other groups of people nowadays that try to pretend that their words are just as offensive, and it's bullshit. You know who are a bunch of fucking pussies? Midgets, and I'll tell you why. You see a fucking midget on TV, they'll try to sell you this shit. They'll go, calling a little person a midget is the same thing as calling a black person a nigger. Now, when I saw that, I said, well, let me do a little experiment. I'm going to go out one day and I'm going to try both things, just to see if they are in fact the same. I found a random little person, I said, "Hey, midget." And I found a random black guy and I said, "Hey, nigger." Turns out, LA, there's a huge fucking difference. One will get you smacked in the shin, and the other one will get your fucking ass kicked. So the lesson is never ever call a black person a nigger, unless they're a midget, then do whatever the fuck you want.